Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Strength Coach Rants. Today we're going to be talking about the bench press and why we are all so wrong to put it up on a pedestal. All right, so today we're going to talk about the bench press and why it's not necessarily the best exercise for like really measuring upper extremity strength. So I used to be one of those guys. I used to be a bench press guy. I loved the bench. I thought there was a lot of value to it, and I still do. But my thoughts have shifted quite a bit. You know, one of the biggest benefits of the bench press is that we can load it to a higher degree than we can things like dumbbells and push-up variations and things like that. And I think that there is absolute value in that. Where I think the issue kind of is when it comes to the bench press is that we put too much value on a regular just power bar bench press. In reality, this exercise, like, there's not a single study to suggest that the bench press actually carries over to any sport whatsoever. There are some studies that kind of link power produced on the bench press with overhead throwing speed. And, you know, so there is value in that. There's value in strengthening our ability to push. There's value in strengthening all the structures associated with the bench. But I'm going to lay out my case here today as to why, like, the power bar regular bench press is not the end all be all, and we should spend less time doing it and devote that time to other things. All right, so what is the bench press? Well, if you break it down to what movements it is, it's internal rotation of the shoulder, abduction of the shoulder, and flexion of the shoulder. Those are the three movements that kind of occur at the shoulder when we bench. It's actually like a pretty terrible pec builder. It gets promoted as something to help you grow your pecs, and it will, but it's much more of like a shoulder tricep exercise than we give it credit for. It's a very poor pec builder, even though on chest day, what's the first thing you do? International Bench Press Day is Monday, and that's everybody's chest day if they're on a bodybuilding split. We think that it's for the pecs, but in reality, it's not. There's a lot of other muscles that contribute to this movement, just like a regular bench press. We're talking the pecs, the lats, the delts, the biceps, the forearm muscles, the glutes if done properly, along with the lumbar extensors, and the scapular stabilizers. The pecs really kind of take a backseat to a lot of these things. I don't know if you've ever like benched before and like pecs didn't really feel it the next day, but your anterior delts are on fire, and that's not necessarily because you were in a bad position. That's because like it's a rough pec builder. It just is. Dumbbells are a lot better. Even like isolation movements can be a lot better for the pecs. The bench just is not that. So when we break down what the bench actually is, all right, again, it's internal rotation of the shoulder, it's abduction, and flexion of the shoulder. Those are the movements that happen when we bench, and if done properly, we're stabilizing the rest of our body while we're doing it. So a little bit of everything gets it. I mean, there's been times when I benched and I've had athletes bench and they come in the next day and like, man, my abs really hurt. Or like, man, my ass is on fire, right? Because if we're doing it right and we're in the proper positions, it really is kind of a total body movement. And you have to remember, when we're benching, we are not pushing the bar away from us. As an athlete, you have to kind of wrap your mind around the fact that like you're delivering force into the ground and the ground's going to react back through you. So the goal is not to push the bar away from us. It's to drive ourselves down into the ground. And if we do that, there's a lot more structures that are going to be sore than the pecs. And a lot of times, like your glutes, abs, lumbar extensors, scapular stabilizers will be a lot more sore after benching than your pecs will, because again, it's not a good pec builder. All right, so now that we know that the bench press is an internal rotation, flexion, and abduction of the shoulder, how did it get to be like this king of upper extremity lifts and the metric of strength when it comes to the upper extremity? It came from bodybuilding. That was where it started. You had guys like Arnold, like they popularized the bench. The NFL Combine, like having the 225 bench test be like the only upper extremity lift that they do. In sports, it's football coaches for the most part. They want to know what a guy benches and totally neglect any other aspect of their training. You know, it just, for a while now, it's been seen as the the metric of strength in the upper extremity, and a lot of it's due to these knuckle draggers that have been, and not strength coaches. Most strength coaches understand that, like, this is not necessarily the best movement. It's the sport coaches that have too much emphasis, or input rather, on what we do within our profession. So it became this way because sport coaches had too much say. The general population probably looked up to people like Arnold, Lou Ferrigno, like way back when, and then later on guys like Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, saw them bench pressing like ridiculous amounts of weight and saw that they were huge. So they decided that like it was this giant pec builder, not to mention Muscle and Fitness, all those back in the early 2000s, late 90s, all those muscle magazines, and Men's Fitness was one. Muscle and Fitness was another one. Muscular Development was another one. They had all these bodybuilders kind of putting their routines in there, and on their pec days or their chest days, like, it was always a heavy bench. That was the first thing that they did. So we as a society decided that that was the metric of strength, and in reality, we couldn't be more wrong. I am much more concerned with how much my athletes can pull than how much they can press. Sure, I love seeing a kid like hit a PR on the bench, and there's value in it, like I said before. But there are other exercises where I'd rather focus our time, and we're going to kind of dive into some of that right now. So where did it come from? Sport coaches, bodybuilding, and the general population just not having a super good understanding of everything. So all that being said, is there a better way? And absolutely there's a better way, and we're going to talk about that right now. So what is the goal of bench pressing, right? We're not building the pecs. We're not like, oh, I got to get my shoulders bigger. Like in the athletic realm and bodybuilding realm, all right, that's fine. That's for the point of this podcast episode. We're going to be talking specifically preparation for sport. So when it comes to like training for sport, why do we bench? All right, yeah, we do want to add some muscle to the upper extremity. We do want to create tension. We do want to be able to protect the structures that surround the shoulder. But more importantly, we are trying to increase our push strength. And there's like a billion ways to do that. Here at the Lions Den, we have something, God, it's like almost 30 variations of the bench press that we do. It doesn't have to be a power bar bench. It can be a cambered bar bench. It can be an easy bar bench. It can be a dumbbell bench. It can be an incline dumbbell press. It can be a neutral grip dumbbell press, be a board press, pin press, fat bar pin press, fat bar press. I mean, it's endless. Floor presses. There are many different exercises that we can do to increase this push strength, and I think getting away from like just a regular bench is a really good thing. Another way that we can do it is with landmine variations, right? It's not just straight in the sagittal plane here, but it's still kind of in the sagittal plane. We're just pushing at an angle. It's just not straight out in front of us. Same thing with the incline bench press. There's like a billion different ways that we can increase our push strength, and the vast majority of these exercises are going to have a lot more carryover to sport. Take the fat bar bench, for example. Fat bar bench, right? It's a fat bar, so we've got like more of an open grip here. That's got a lot more carryover to sport. It's also going to, kind of make the forearms fire to a higher degree because you're gripping onto something a little bit heavier. You're at a mechanical disadvantage having your hand open like that. So there's a ton of different ways we can do this, and rotating these movements like allows us to continue to progress over time. So I don't have to sit here and be like, all right, we're going to bench press with the power bar, and that's going to be what we do, and we're not going to vary from that because this is the most important exercise. It's not. The power bar bench press, I would say, gets utilized the least often in this gym. We almost never do it. And like, to be honest, I don't care. Like I've said in this podcast before, I don't care how much you bench. Like, I don't. Are we getting stronger? Like with our pressing, are we getting more stable when we press? Are we in a better position? Am I able to kind of, keep a little bit of external rotation in the shoulder and keep my elbows down? Am I able to stay packed in the shoulder when I incline barbell press or dumbbell press? Am I able to like allow my scapula to kind of slide and move the way it's supposed to? Those are all much better metrics than like how much is your bench press. So I get fought with, with coaches a lot of times on this because they want to know the bench, like how much do they bench? And I just tell them, I don't give a shit how much they bench. And if you can ask this coach, how much do you need them to bench, and what is the benefit of that? You know what I mean? So if you say to the coach, all right, well, I will have them bench press, and this is the number that they bench press, but like, what specifically is that going to carry over onto the field of play? And 9 times out of 10, reality, it should be 10 times out of 10, they're not going to be able to tell you, right? So we can use this Swiss bar press, we can use this fat bar bench, we can do an incline close grip bench, we can do a cambered bar press, we can do a floor press, and we can continuously change that movement so that we're not just stuck in this rut with the regular bench press. I'm a big fan of rotating movements, especially with athletes. Westside popularized it, but I think it has even more application to sport, because we're not, like, the goal here is not to increase any specific lift. We're trying to increase movement proficiency. We're trying to increase overall positioning. We're trying to increase just push strength, which can be done with the landmine, a dumbbell, a push-up variation, a barbell, a fat bar. Again, the possibilities are damn near unlimited. So don't feel like it has to be like a regular barbell press. That's all you have access to. That's okay. We can change the incline. We can change the grip. We can add, even if you don't have boards, you can throw a foam roller in there. We can floor press. We can pin press. Like, there's a lot of different ways that we can skin this cat and get our push strength in the, heading in the direction that we want it to. So stop thinking bench press, because it doesn't matter, and start thinking like push strength. Is our push strength heading in the right direction? And the rest of the things will clean themselves up, and as an added bonus, their actual bench press will also go up. So it's a total win here. So in my opinion, like, stay away from the regular barbell bench. It's not that there's anything wrong with it, but there's a billion different ways that have better carryover to the sport of play that we can do this. And it doesn't matter how much you bench. Just try to wrap your mind around that. All right, so throughout this podcast episode, I've kind of neglected to talk about actual positioning when we bench. There's a billion tutorials out there. My biggest cues for my athletes are driving through their heels, squeezing their butt, packing their shoulders in, externally rotating at the shoulder, and pushing themselves away from the bar. I think if you can get into your athlete's head that you need to push yourself away from the bar as opposed to pushing the bar away from them, so much stuff's going to get cleaned up. Their butt's going to stop coming off the bench. They're going to be able to maintain tightness. They're going to be able to keep their shoulders pinned back, right? So that's a big cue that I learned very early on when I was interning from a guy named Frank Wintrick, who was at UCLA. He's been all over the place. He was at South Florida at the time. But he got in my head, and he's like, hey, we're delivering force into the ground. We are not like pushing something away from us. We are pushing ourselves down into the ground. And that was a game changer for me in understanding bench positioning and all that kind of stuff. So when we bench, my biggest cues, obviously feet in the ground, hips externally rotated, squeeze your glutes, engage your lumbar extensors. It doesn't have to be a huge arch, but there needs to be a little bit of one. Bury those shoulder blades into the ground, all right, and push yourself away from the bar. Those are the biggest things for me, and they're game changers for a lot of kids who really struggle in the bench press, and that carries over through every variation of it, right? So that's not just a regular bench press, that's every version outside of like incline, barbell and dumbbell presses. But other than that, those are big. Again, I'll say it one more time: feet in the ground, hips externally rotated. Squeeze your glutes, engage your lumbar extensors, squeeze those shoulder blades in, and push yourself away from the bar. Those 6 cues will clean up 90% of the issues that you have with the bench. All right, so that's it for today. I know this was a relatively quick one. Got a lot going on between this being kind of the bigger times of the year. Kids start trickling back in this time of year. I just moved. There's a lot going on in my life right now, so I apologize for how kind of short this one is, but I feel like there is a ton of information in it, so hopefully you learned something. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. I am Connor at theldsp.com. Any of our social media, you can DM me. I'm pretty open. I'll talk shop with anyone who wants to. But again, hope you learned something. Hope everybody has a good rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.